Okay, welcome back everybody. And in this video, I'm going to be going over the results of the series that I played between the 1978 Boston Red Sox and the 1976 Philadelphia Phillies. So let's go ahead and get right on into it. In game number one, we have Dennis Eckersley going for the Red Sox and Steve Carlton going for the Philadelphia Phillies. And the Phillies do have the first two games at home. So let's take a look at what happened here in game number one. You're going to see right here that the Red Sox were able to hit around Steve Carlton pretty well as he gave up 13 hits in 7 innings of work, allowing 6 runs. You had a home run by Carlton Fisk and a 2-run home run by Butch Hobson. Hobson's home run was in the top half of the fourth inning to give the Red Sox a 5-0 lead. And pretty much from there, the Red Sox were able to pretty much cruise to a pretty easy win. Dennis Eckersley went all the way, only allowing 2 runs on 9 hits and 2 walks. So the Boston Red Sox were able to get the first game in Philly. Now, as we move on to game number two, we've got Luis Tiant going for the 78 Red Sox and Jim Lomborg going for the 1976 Philadelphia Phillies. Jim Lomborg had a really good year for the Phillies that year and really has a good card that I thought would match up well against the 78 Red Sox because his card against right-handed hitting is really pretty solid. So I really felt going in that the Phillies had a little bit of an advantage in the starting rotation category, although Louis Tiant also has a very good card from 1978. So let's take a look at what happens in game number two here. 78 Red Sox at 1976 Phillies. Game two with the Red Sox up 1-0 in the series. And you're going to see that Fred Lynn was able to hit a 2-run home run in the top half of the second inning to give the Sox a 2-0 lead, and Philly came back with a run in the fourth to make it 2-1, and that's how it stayed all the way until the ninth inning when the Red Sox were able to push across 2 runs. You had Fred Lynn with a one-out RBI triple that scored Carlton Fisk, and George Scott came off the bench to pinch hit for Luis Tiant in the top of the ninth. He had an RBI double to give the Red Sox a 4-1 lead. And so after 2 games, the 78 Red Sox have a 2-0 series lead as they win both games in Philly. You see Luis Tiant goes 8 innings, only allowing 1 run, and Bob Stanley pitches a scoreless ninth inning. So through 2 games, the 76 Phillies are really up against it as they head to Fenway for games 3, 4, and if necessary, game number 5. Now, as we move on to game number 3 now, we've got the 1976 Phillies throwing Larry Christensen on the mound, and for the 1978 Red Sox, you got Mike Torres. And once again, for the third straight game in the series, the Red Sox were able to get an excellent pitching performance out of their starter as Mike Torres goes all the way, only allowing 1 earned run. Did allow 12 hits in the game, but he was able to work in and out of trouble all game as the Red Sox were able to take game number 3 by a score of 6-2. Rick Burleson had 2 RBI singles in the game. Jerry Remy had an RBI, Jim Rice had an RBI, and Butch Hobson had an RBI. So Boston is up 3-0 against the 1976 Philadelphia Phillies. So obviously, as we move over to game number 4 now, I have to throw Steve Carlton out there for the 1976 Phillies as they are facing elimination. And for the 1978 Red Sox, I decided not to mess around with Dennis Eckersley on 3 days rest and ran Bill Lee out there, who had a pretty good card from 1978, as I believe he went 13-10 in 1978 or something like that. But that's how we look for game number 4 here. Steve Carlton against Bill Lee with the Boston Red Sox up 3-0 in the series. So let's take a look if Boston was able to complete the sweep. And you're going to see here in the results, the Philadelphia Philly bats were finally able to wake up. We had Greg Lazinski RBI double, and Ali Brown had an RBI single to give the Phillies a 2-0 lead after one half of an inning, and then they added single runs in the second, the third, and they added 2 more in the fourth inning as they were able to take a pretty easy 8-2 win. Steve Carlton was kind of working in and out of trouble the first couple of innings of this game. You could see by his line score, he goes 8 innings, allows 9 hits and 5 walks. Very big moment in this game took place in the bottom half of the fourth inning, where the Phillies were holding on to a 6-2 lead. And in that fourth inning, you had Butch Hobson lead off with a single, Rick Burleson walk, and Dwight Evans singled. And Jim Rice was coming up with the bases loaded and nobody out. And this was really a big turning point in the game where I just happened to roll, I believe it's a 212 on Jim Rice's card, and he lines out into a triple play. Now, this is one thing that I take issue with Strat-O-Matic. I don't like the fact that everyone on their card has a line out max on their card, because I don't think it's very realistic where you have a chance at a triple play every game. If you think about it, I mean, it's just one of those things that comes up, and when it happened, I was kind of bummed out and disappointed. And I just kind of said, okay, is that really going to happen? Jim Rice is going to line out into a triple play, but nonetheless, that's what came up on the roll and the card. Like I said, I think it's like 212 on Jim Rice's card. So pretty much after that, Carlton was able to settle down and go the 8 innings. So the Philadelphia Phillies are able to extend the series for at least one game here as they stay alive. As we move on to game number 5, we got Dennis Eckersley going for the Red Sox. He's obviously pitching on full rest, and I bring Jim Lomborg back on 3 days rest for the Philadelphia Phillies. Just felt like this was the best option for the Philadelphia Phillies, as my real only other starting pitcher options would have been Tom Underwood and possibly Jim Cott. And I just wasn't crazy about throwing a lefty for a second straight game in Fenway Park, especially with all the Red Sox right-handed bats that they have in their lineup. So let's see what we have going on in game number 5, and let's see if the Phillies can extend the series and take it back to Philly and make things really, really interesting. So let's take a look at what happened. Now, one of the things that I did going into this game for the 76 Phillies was, um, since they were facing a right-handed pitcher in this game, and I decided to change the lineup up a little bit from what I did back in game number 3, was I decided to move Dick Allen to DH and play Tom Hutton at first base, mainly because of the fact that Ollie Brown doesn't have that great of a card against right-handed pitching. I had no problem playing him in game number 4 against the lefty Bill Lee, but um, so what I decided to do was run Tom Hutton out there. Very good glove. He's a 1 at first base, very low E rating, and he does have a decent card against right-handed pitching. So I figured I'd throw him out there, and let's take a look at what happened in this game. Now, in the top half of the second inning, with the Phillies down 1-0. We've got Greg Lazinski leads off with a walk. That's followed by a J. John Stone double. After Dick Allen pops out, we have Tim McCarver walk. So we got the bases loaded and 1 out, and Tom Hutton coming up. Now, Hutton, to my surprise, even though that year I believe he had like 170 something at bats, he only hit one home run in that 1976 season. However, against right-handed pitching, he does have end power. Now, for those of you who are not familiar with Strat-O-Matic, every hitter has a power rating. End power means that you have the power to hit a ballpark effect home run, and if it's W power or weak power, that means you do not have the power to hit a home run and it's a single. So what happens with Tom Hutton up with bases loaded and 1 out, I roll a ballpark effect home run on Dennis Eckersley card. And I just assumed Tom Hutton was a W power, but luckily I looked down and noticed that he was an N power, so I was rolling for a home run, and Tom Hutton hits a grand slam to give the Phillies a 4-1 lead as we go to the bottom half of the second inning. And in that bottom half of the second inning, the Red Sox were able to get the runs right back. Where after the first two men made out, we had a Burleson single, Jerry Remy walked, and Jim Rice hits a three-run home run to make the score 4-4. So we've got a little bit of a wild one here in game number five. So as we move to the top half of the third inning, Greg Lazinski hits a solo home run to give the Phillies a 5-4 lead. Now, what I did with the 76 Phillies at this point was this. After two innings, I just had the Red Sox just pounding away at Jim Lomborg's card. And the Phillies have a team that has a bullpen that is really very deep and so good. Where I just said, okay, you know what? I'm just going to make this a bullpen game and try to match up as best I can to get the Phillies this win and get the series back to Philly for game number six and get things really interesting. So I bring in Wayne Twitchell, who had a really good card in 1976, very effective. He's a right-hander. Um, I mean, I personally don't remember him. I mean, give me a break. I was 3 years old in 1976, but he's a right-handed pitcher who has a really good card against left-handed batters, and against righties, his card is good. You know, a lot of strikeouts. So I felt good bringing him in. So he pitches a scoreless bottom half of the third and also a scoreless bottom half of the fourth. So we go to the top half of the fifth inning with the Phillies holding on to a 5-4 lead. And in that top half of the fifth inning, after Greg Lazinski led off making out, we had a double by Jay Johnstone. Then Dick Allen strikes out. Tim McCarver gets a one asterisk single, so I wasn't able to advance Jay Johnstone home. So with first and third and two out, I got Tom Hutton up again in a big situation, and he comes through with an RBI single. So my move of playing Tom Hutton is really paying off. As so far in the game, he's 2 for 3 with 5 RBIs, and the Phillies at that point have a 6-4 lead. And I'm really thinking at this point, I was like, wow, you know, Phillies are going to get this game and extend the series. So things are really getting interesting here. So as we move to the bottom half of the fifth inning, very big moment here. As with one out, we had Fred Lynn get a single and Dwight Evans hit a two-run homer to tie the game at 6. So we got a really wild one here in game number five, as through 5 innings, we have a 6-6 tie. Um, Now, in that top half of the fifth inning, where the Phillies took that 6-4 lead, I brought in Dick Drago to kind of stop the bleeding and kind of hold things right there as best they could. Uh, I'm pretty sure Bob Stanley was the official closer of the 1978 Red Sox, but I basically look at Drago and Stanley as basically interchangeable parts. Both of them are 3 inning relievers, and both of them in 1978 had very solid cards. So really, either move I made there for the Red Sox, I would have felt comfortable with. And you're going to see that Dick Drago really made a big impact on this game as he goes 3 1/3 scoreless innings, and he was able to hold the Phillies at bay. So we go to the bottom half of the eighth inning in a 6-6 tie. At this point, I have Gene Garber working in his third inning of relief for the 1976 Philadelphia Phillies. And let's take a look at what happens in the bottom half of the eighth inning. Dwight Evans leads off by making out. George Scott gets a single. And this is really important here because this is a situation where I'm looking at it from a Red Sox standpoint and I say, okay, we got a tie game. It's the bottom half of the eighth inning, and I got George Scott sitting on first base with one out. I'm someone who will immediately look to the bench and see if there's someone I could bring in to pinch run. I bring in Hancock to pinch run for George Scott, and it would also allow me to make a easy move as we move to the top half of the ninth inning because I could just play Hancock in left and move Carl Yastrzemski to first base. So, um, although Hancock's not in there to steal a base, I'm just like, okay, I just want better speed out there on the base pass. Well, sure enough, Butch Hobson, the next batter up, gets a two asterisk single. So Hancock is sitting on third. So we got first and third and one out. And sure enough, what happens? Rick Burleson comes up and he hits a fly ball to right. Now, on Strat-O-Matic cards, you will get sometimes it'll say like fly ball, outfield position, left, center, or right. And when it has a B next to it, it means it's an RBI sac fly. When it has a fly ball, outfield position, B question mark, that means you have the option uh, to run the runner from third home to try to score a run. Now, Hancock is a 1 to 14 running where George Scott was only like a 1 to 10 running. So, right there, that move worked out because had I had George Scott sitting on third, I probably would not have tried scoring with him because Jay Johnstone had a -1 arm. But with Hancock on third base, I'm like, okay, let me go for it. And as it turns out, like I rolled the one, so George Scott would have scored anyway. But that's just an example of where, when you're in a tight game like this and you got someone who could come off the bench to run the bases, go for it. So Red Sox were able to take the lead 7-6. And when we got to the top half of the ninth inning, I didn't want to stretch Drago out for a fourth inning, so I bring Bob Stanley in. So let's take a look what happened in the top half of the ninth inning. Gary Maddox leads off by making out. Mike Schmidt strikes out. Greg Lazinski gets a single. So once again, I'm sitting in a situation where I was like, okay, I got to get some speed on the base pass. The Phillies have this guy Bassetti sitting on the bench, who's a double A stealing, and I know in real life that a manager would probably not end a series on trying to get a stolen base, but I purposely put him in the game to steal second base and get into scoring position. Well, sure enough, he steals second base. So I got him sitting on second with two out and Jay Johnstone coming up with Dick Allen in the on deck circle. So I'm kind of thinking there, I'm like, well, I got Stanley on the mound for the Red Sox, whose card against right handed hitting is a lot better than it is against lefties. And obviously, Jay Johnstone was a very solid hitter against right handed pitching. However, like I know the Cardinal rule is do not put the winning run on base. So, like, I kind of sat there and thought about it for a couple seconds there. I was like, would the Red Sox walk Jay Johnstone here and pitch to Dick Allen? Well, I decided to just go ahead and pitch to Jay Johnstone. And luckily for the Red Sox, Jay Johnstone rolls a um, ballpark effect single. Now, in Strat-O-Matic, ballpark effect singles are a single one asterisk, which means the base runner only advances one base. So Jay Johnstone does reach on a single. However, Bassetti has to hold at third base because, again, ballpark effect singles are just one asterisk. So we got top half of the ninth inning. Red Sox up 7-6 with two outs, runners on first and third for the Phillies, and Dick Allen at the plate. And Bob Stanley is able to retire Dick Allen, and the 1978 Red Sox defeat the 1976 Phillies 4-1 in a series which only went 5 games, but really this game 5 really made the entire series for me because this was really a game that was a lot of fun to play. There were times during this game, and really pretty much throughout the game, I just had a feeling that the Phillies were going to win this game and extend the series, which I thought would have been pretty cool to maybe see how far the Phillies can extend the series after being down 3-0. But the 1978 Red Sox were able to defeat the 1976 Phillies 4-1.